Welcome to the Good for America podcast. I'm your host, former Congressman Bob Good, former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. And I'm excited today to continue our series with some of the courageous conservative warriors in the House of Representatives in Washington. We're going to continue that series today with Tim Burchett from Tennessee 2, the 2nd District of Tennessee, based in the Knoxville area. Before I introduce Tim, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast, to share it with your friends, to rate the show, and also follow me on social media at Rep Bob Good. So thanks for joining the Good for America podcast. Again, our guest today is from the 2nd District of Tennessee, Tim Burchett. Tim, welcome to the show.
Bob, it's a great pleasure, brother, and I miss seeing you. I miss your work at the Freedom Caucus. Not a member, of course, but you know my conservative voting record. I miss your friendship, and I miss the day-to-day interaction we had.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tim here in just a moment to our audience, but thanks, Tim, for being here. But little side note, as chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, I did spend a lot of time trying to recruit Tim Burchett to join the Freedom Caucus because he is one of those exceptions. I often would say that if you're not in the Freedom Caucus, it's generally because either you're not really conservative or you're not really courageous. But Tim has proven time and again during his time in Washington that that doesn't apply to him. He is the exception to that rule. Tim Burchett is from the Knoxville area, and he has the privilege of representing his area in Congress. He first got elected in 2018, so he's in his 4th term. He serves on the Oversight Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He's former mayor of Knox County for 8 years there serving as mayor. He also was 16 years in the state legislature. He's a small business background, a businessman, successful businessman, graduate of University of Tennessee in Knoxville. He's married to his wife, Kelly, and they have a daughter, Isabel. And again, it's a privilege to have Tim with us because he is a true, courageous conservative warrior, and we need more people like him in Washington, D.C. representing us. Tim, I want to start talking with the first 7 months of full control of government. The Republicans have the trifecta. They've got the White House, the Senate, and the House. You and I were there together over the previous 4 years when the Dems had full control of government during the first 2 years of Biden administration. Similar situation to where we are now with narrow majorities in the House and the Senate. And then the last 2 years, we had just the House under former Speaker McCarthy and then Speaker Johnson. Just talk a little bit, if you would, Congressman Burchett, about the first 7 months of full Republican control, what your thoughts are on what's taken place, what have Republicans done well, what are the main accomplishments, and then maybe what are your concerns or disappointments or things that Republicans need to do better on.
Well, you took the adjective I was going to use. If you see me reach under my desk, got a couple of dogs down here, Buzz and Roscoe. Buzz needs to be scratched continuously, so if I reach under, I'm not twitching out on you. I guess the word that described my feelings of Washington, I mean, my 8 years have really been disappointment. I just see missed opportunities a lot, Bob. I know we're in as I like to say, we're one flu season away of being out of the majority. And I know you got folks in New York that are, that Kamala Harris won by 14 or 15 points in some cases, but I still think the Republic, the population sees Congress as a failure, and I kind of go back and forth on that because I think we missed a lot of opportunities and things that we've done. I think we slow walk stuff. I think we listen to the K Street lobbyists too much, and I don't know how you change that, even with the person the man or woman at the top, because it's just so ingrained. And I know that I'm not answering your total question, but it's kind of my philosophy. I guess I'll write a book about it, but nobody would buy it and nobody believe it. I wish we could push more towards savings. I felt like the big beautiful bill, I had my doubts about it. It was a little bigger and more beautiful than I liked, but of course with the cut the restraints on energy and things, I think our economy is going to explode if we just allow it to. If we can get out of our own dadgum way. I felt like when we do something good, that we do a terrible job of messaging, and we're always reacting to the Democrats. And I don't know what that answer to that is. You've seen me at the 1 minutes, and I've talked about it, and you have too, about what we're doing and what America's talking about. And I guess my final thing on all this is that, Trump won with a pretty good majority overall. Congress did not. And
That's right.
Congress keeps trying to go their path. And we need to start talking about the border. We need to start talking about the economy more. We need to start doing the things that back us up. And to the other issue, of course, that right now that I've been working on is the stock trade issue that we've uh, gotten involved with. You know, there's no earthly on or there's no way in the world that we're beating Berkshire Hathaway. Members of Congress are getting 200, 300 or more percent return, some of them higher on the short term, and it's both parties, and you know that, and I know that. Uh, it's tough to get meaningful legislation passed, and just because it's so big, and it's partly due to the money. Leadership is always out raising money because they don't have the money. They can't keep the majority, and they can't keep the majority. They can't stay in power. But what are you going to do with that power is the question. And my bill on defunding the Taliban, $40 million a week. We're giving to the Taliban over $5 billion, according to the State Department. And you know good and well, Bob, the State Department's no friend of yours or mine. Yet they put those numbers out. And it was like pulling teeth getting that bill passed. And it's stuck in the Senate, and nobody's talking about it. I just think we are a lost nation, and we need real revival. And I think that would solve a lot of our problems. But the current path we're headed is not putting us in that direction.
I think you're right. You touched on it. Americans are frustrated. Conservatives are frustrated. Republican voters are frustrated that it seems like things never change in Washington and D.C. And Republicans can't be the party of just not as bad as the Democrats. And while President Trump has done a lot of great things through executive action, through his administration, attacking DEI, trying to reduce the federal workforce, trying to fight against the climate extremism and to unleash American energy, what he's doing with fighting crime, a lot of great things the president is doing. But to your point a moment ago, where I feel like Republicans have really fallen short is addressing the debt, the spending, the deficit, particularly in the big bill. The big bill has a negative 10-year fiscal impact projected to be $3 to $4 trillion on top of the 20 to 25 trillion the debt's going to go up without the bill over 10 years. And that's with, as you know, the tax cuts are expiring in the second half of the 10-year period. In theory, we know a future Congress is going to come back and extend those because they don't want to have to pay for them for the whole 10 years. And then the tax cuts expire in a few years. And then the spending cuts, most of them don't even kick into the latter half of the 10-year period, which means a future Congress can rescind those. So I think you share my view, I know you do, that the debt is an existential threat to the country. And so I think where Republicans really fell short is not using reconciliation to effectively address the debt in the big bill. Thoughts you have on that? I know that you expressed concerns about it. You expressed reservations. Many conservatives like you were reluctant to vote for it out of the House. It got worse when it came back from the Senate. It was a take it or leave it thing. The president was demanding that you vote for it. But thoughts on the fiscal impact of the big bill
Yeah.
and what we do from here from a fiscal standpoint with debt crossing $37 trillion this month.
I think we got caught up in too much Washington talk with it, Bob. Reconciliation and everything. Everybody started down the path of, oh, we got to get this out so we can, you remember when you were there, we got to dictate what's going on with it. We're the ones that need to be in control. And yet we send it over the Senate and they change it. And then we're like Pavlov's dog. We just lap it up. They ring the bell. We're hungry. And we just lap it up and take it. And I don't get the whole thing about the Senate and the House, these two separate bodies. We pass something and then it's supposed to just miraculously happen over in the Senate, or they do it in the Senate and we do it in the House. I don't understand, if we're all on the same sheet, on the same page, why our leadership, why our finance people aren't meeting together with their finance people? Why are we not coalescing around a common goal? And, you know, I was in the state legislature. I came from the House 4 years, Democrat control, very conservative Democrats. It's not like the radicals you see out there today. These guys were farmers, labor people. Yeah, they played ball with the trial lawyers and stuff. And but we kept the state income tax away from Tennessee, and and we don't do that in Congress. We do not. It's just it's like some miraculous thing, and I do not see why we do not have a conduit between. And I think that's part of the problem. It's us against them, and nobody cares back home. No, I guarantee you, when you were in Congress, half the time people called you senator, because people call me that all the time. I'd like to be in the Senate. We can talk about that later.
We're going to talk
But
about that. Yeah.
yeah, I would like to talk about that. But I don't think people really get the whole thing. You know, I remember when I was at a Martin Luther King Day parade one time, and this very well dressed lady, a black lady, pulled up in her car, and it was really cold. It's always the coldest day of the year. And she rolled her window down. I was in the state Senate at the time, and they were impeaching Bill Clinton. And she rolled her window down and said, "Tim Burchett, if you vote to impeach Bill Clinton, I will never vote for you again." And I said, "Ma'am, I promise you, I will not vote to impeach Bill Clinton." Because I was in the state Senate. And she said, "That's why I'm for you, Tim. I'll
Kept
always
your
be
word,
for you."
right?
She rolled her window up and drove off in her Cadillac. And I'll never, the little Cadillac, I remember that day to it, but I can take you to I can show you on the street where I was standing that happened. But I think that's what we forget. We get in Washington and we get too hung up on all this stuff, and we forget where we're at, and we forget we haven't forgot where we're at. We forget where we should be, and we should be back home representing our people in Washington D.C. But instead, we get caught up in all this stuff, and I think that's partly by design. The big boys, because if it's always a little confusion up there, the big boys are always in control. You know, the tarmac politicians, the politicians that are always going to be on the tarmac greeting the president. I've been in politics for over 20 something. I counted up. I forget now how many years it is. Never been invited out on the tarmac to visit, to see a real president. You know, I've been close, and they always bump me. You know, and I'm a dadgum United States congressman now, but it's because you people like you and I do not play that stupid game, and we know where we come from, we know the people that we represent, and I think in Washington D.C. they get caught up in all this garbage and the minutia of it. I was on CNN the other day, and I told the lady, I go, "Shoot, did you see what just ran by us?" And she said, "No, what?" I said, "That was a glacier. A glacier just ran by the United States Congress," because that's about the speed we move, and that's the way the big boys like it. Because if it doesn't work, if it doesn't change, they're still in power.
Well, to your point about the, the makeup of Congress and the spending in Congress, or it's my experience and my belief from my time there that about a third of the Republicans in the House, some 70, 75, don't want to do Republican stuff, don't want to cut spending, don't want to shrink government. About another third in the middle would like to do good things, Republican things, but they won't do it at any risk or any cost or any threat to their ambitions or getting out of line with leadership or with the president or their donor class, as you referenced. And then there's only about a third, 70, 75 Republicans who have some degree of principle and courage and want to try to fight to do the right thing. They're not going to show the degree of courage that you have and the principle that you have in folks like you, but it's even worse in the Senate. You mentioned the Senate, and you've only got a handful of conservatives there who really want to cut spending and really want to address the debt and the deficit. So on that note, you guys are scheduled to get back the day after Labor Day, early September. For some reason, the August recess took place in spite of only two of the 12 spending bills coming out of the House in July. And as a matter of fact, the Speaker sent you home early. I'll circle back to that in a moment. But you're coming back after a 5-week recess with 3 weeks to go until the expiration of the current funding mechanism for the government. What do you see happening with September 30 when theoretically, at least, if there's not a funding mechanism in place, then there's quote unquote a government shutdown, which we both realize is not really a shutdown. But what do you see happening? What is party leadership saying? What are they talking about doing with respect to the funding of the government by September 30?
I think it's the same game we always play, Bob. They know what they want to get. They want to take care of, as you call them, the donor class. And both parties realize that, and they play this little game. They push us up against this supposed shutdown, which you and I both know they can't take. You know, they always say the military, they're going to lose. You know, they can't lose their houses. You can't lose all that. There's laws in place. Congress still gets paid apparently. Um, Although I was in a shutdown when I first got there, and we didn't get paid. So I I think that's the play. Push us up against the wall. I agree. We should have stayed. I mean, we could have gotten this done. You know, as I like to say when I come off the House floor, you know, these post offices aren't going to name themselves. Just the worthless legislation that we pass. You know, it's very frustrating to me, and I think that's why Trump just went on with his executive orders, because he realizes that even with his negotiating skills, it's just easier for him just to do a dadgum thing, and he takes all the credit. And we're stupid to think that why did we not pass that stuff? It was some of that stuff was crazy popular, you know, banning men from going and playing in girls' sports, stuff like that. Why weren't we ahead of that? Banning the butchery of this surgery of change. I don't even call it surgery. It's just demonic butchery of chopping off little boys' sex organs and girls as well, and doing all that. Why did we not do that? Why are we waiting on this stuff? I just think we just missed opportunities, and we need to quit doing that. And it's by design. It's I gave this theory the other day, and I'm sure I caught some grief for it. But I said, you know, in the Middle East and all these wars and stuff, Ukraine, if peace breaks out, those people are out of power. They are completely out of power, because that's what they down deep. I don't think they really want peace. They want to stay in power. They want the ego. It's like Winston Churchill. He ran England. He's literally saved the world. And then what they do right after the war?
Got rid of
They
him.
they kicked him out. They kicked him out. So I think
Well,
we need people that are willing to get kicked out.
to
But
your
we don't
point,
have that. We don't have that. Everybody up there, you know it, and I know it. Not everybody. I don't know. I would never want to be Speaker of the House. You know, hold a gun to my head to do that, and I still wouldn't do it. I don't think it's the toughest job in America. I married a woman who was a widow and raised a little girl. That's the toughest job in America, completely. I don't. But maybe the second is Speaker of the House.
well, but to your point, Tim, on being speaker, I often say that the problem with Washington is it's filled with people who just want to be in Washington. The priority is to get there, be there, stay there, die there, and instead of to make a difference while they're there. And the same thing is the problem with speaker. The reason why someone like you couldn't become speaker is because the speakership is filled by people whose sole ambition, whose primary mission is to be speaker, stay speaker, defend the speakership. And you don't have to say that, but I'll say that with respect to your speaker. But back to the big bill and the opportunity here with the expiration of the funding of the government on September 30. That's what so frustrated me. We had reconciliation where you could pass things, whatever Republicans wanted. They could have done whatever they wanted with a simple majority in the Senate, or even 50-50 with J.D. Vance breaking the tie. Now you need 60 votes in the Senate for the September 30 funding, however that mechanism is, whether it's passing the bills, whether it's a CR as we would anticipate, or an omnibus, or whatever it might be. And the president demanded to you all, while the House was through the wee hours of the night, changing the bill up to the last moment. Nobody had time to read the 1,000-page bill. And the president's just demanding, just pass it, no matter what's in it. And then you have Republicans afterwards saying, oh, we didn't know this was in it. We didn't know that was in it. We might not have voted for it if it had this, if we knew it had this or that. And then while it's over at the Senate side, the Senate's changing it. And the president's demanding, just pass whatever the Senate sends you back. Just pass it no matter what, without even knowing what the Senate was going to send back. And then you guys didn't have time to read it again, and it gets passed again. I wish that the president would have thrown his weight behind spending cuts and threatened the moderates the way that he, or maybe the liberals is a better term, the way that he threatened the conservatives if he didn't support it, and then maybe we'd have a better product. I want to ask you, where do you think that conservatives in the House will vote for another CR? Are you concerned about a government shutdown? What do you think we ought to do if Chuck Schumer threatens a Schumer shutdown? I have some thoughts on that, but what are your thoughts if there's a risk of a shutdown fight? Because let's say Republicans are united in the House with a simple majority, and we've got 50 to 53 votes in the Senate on the Republican side. What about a shutdown fight? What do you think Republicans ought to do on that?
I don't see a lot of courage. I don't see a lot of courage. I think we better make our case early for the spending cuts and where we're headed as a country, and continue to make those and quit allowing the other side to dictate it. And and the thing we do a press conference or we send something out, and that's about it. You got to take it to the streets, man. You got to take it to the social media, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, OAN, all of them. I go on all of them, and I get a lot of grief for that from members. But you know what? I'm sick of taking it on the chin. Somebody has to be. I'm on CNN every day. I was on there last night, for goodness sakes. So I think we got to take it to them, and we got to dictate the message. And the problem with that is, I don't think our leadership will take it to them. I don't think they will put that message out. I think it's, oh, we don't want to shut down going into it's always, we're going into this next election cycle. We don't want to, you're going to cost us the majority because you deposed the former speaker. It's always that. It's always about that. But what have we done with it? What have we actually done with it? We've curtailed some things. We've locked the border down. We've done some things, energy independence, things like that. But again, I get so angry about our messaging, our missed opportunity. I was with a group, I don't know, I've been in 36 states, 36 counties here in Tennessee over the last couple of months. I get asked to speak at one, and then they all want me there. So it's kind of fun. But I had a guy ask me, he said, when are y'all going to start talking about what's in the big, beautiful bill? And I said, well, I have been. He said, well, I understand you are, but nobody else is. And I get that a lot. And I just think, what in the world, the missed opportunity? And that's what's going to happen, Bob. We will not message it. We will get up against the wall, and then we will cave.
Well, Tim,
that's my
when the Dems were in a similar position after they had won in 20, had full control of government, narrow majorities, they knew that the 22 midterms were going to be challenging for them. So the first 2 years throughout 21 and 22, they had full control, and they went bold and big and radical. They passed their $1 trillion plus phony infrastructure bill. They passed their $1 trillion plus Inflation Increase Act. And they used the 22 midterms as motivation to get their stuff done because they might lose. In our case, we ought to use the 26 midterms in the same way, that we're motivated to do what we can while we can. But since our agenda is right, since our agenda is good for the American people, to your point, you said, hey, I don't think we'll see any courage. If we actually showed some courage and some fight, I think the American people would reward us in next year's midterms, because we did what we said we would do, and we actually made a difference, and we were willing to show courage to do that. That's in short supply in Washington, as I know that you're aware more than anybody else. But I want to make one other point on the potential of a shutdown. It's my understanding that if we get to September 30 without the government funded because Republicans are standing on principle and the Democrats don't want to come along, that Russ Vought, as the OMB director, can declare basically just about every federal employee essential. And the Democrats have been screaming and saying every federal employee is essential, so Trump can't let them go, is what they've been screaming. So Russ Vought can just declare that all the federal workers are essential and have to keep showing up to work, but they won't get paid while there's a shutdown. And then Republicans could show real courage and say, you know what, Democrats, if we have a Schumer shutdown, we've appropriately funded the government, we're changing some policy, we're cutting some spending. If we have a Schumer shutdown, we're not going to back pay the federal workers because of the Schumer shutdown, and call the Democrats' bluff and force them to cave because they love government, they love Washington, they love the federal workforce, and they wouldn't want them not to get paid. What do you think about that?
I think that's an avenue again, but it's going to take some bravery on our part, and
It
I
is.
don't see that bravery. I don't see that. I don't think that see that level of strategy. We're A to B, and we need to be A to G. You know, we just we're playing checkers, and it seems like everybody else is playing chess. We're looking, and you look at a good pool player. I'm hitting that cue ball at that number one ball, but the great pool players are seeing where the repercussions, where that ball is gonna end up, and where the next two or three shots are in their head, and that's the kind of strategy we need. But again, I don't see that in our leadership. And the part of the problem is, I think everybody wants to be speaker, Bob. Everybody wants to be speaker. They're looking at an avenue, and I think in the back of their mind, they might not admit it. You probably have to put them under deep uh, hypnosis, but they're all figuring out a way if this thing falls apart, and it all falls apart, how they can pick up the pieces and be speaker. And you've got folk, and I believe that you're seeing some things even being undermined by our own party in different avenues. And I don't have any direct proof of that. I do have proof of it, but I don't. It's hard to really pinpoint to explain in the amount of time we have here. But you've seen it, you know it,
Well,
and things are it's just human nature, and it's very unfortunate.
sadly, I agree with you. I think you didn't say his name, but I'll say it. Mike Johnson's sole mission is to stay as speaker. He's only speaker because of President Trump, and he'll only remain a speaker as long as President Trump supports him. And and whether the speakership changed him or revealed who and what he is, I don't know which one took place, but that's a sad commentary when your mission is to stay speaker. Couple of quick questions before I want to move to the Senate for a moment, but just get your thoughts on three or four things. Number one, the president has floated the idea of sending out rebate checks, similar to what did during COVID, but has talked about sending out rebate checks to the American people, a few $100 per taxpayer, what have you. What are your thoughts on that? Would you support sending out rebate checks at a time when we're running a $2 trillion annual deficit?
No, no. I remember during COVID, we did that, and one of the wealthiest men in the country, really, a friend of mine. We get along sometimes, we don't sometimes. Owns a big oil company, or he did, and they since sold out to Berkshire Hathaway, most of it. Still have a control of some of it. And he called, and we were talking about it and laughing. He said, Timmy, he's older, and he said, Timmy, I can't remember what it was. Was it 500 or 1,000? I can't remember what they sent us during COVID. He said, I don't need this money. I said, I don't know why we're doing this. And I said, I don't either. I mean, I could use it. I've got a family. I said, but we're in debt. We're just borrowing this money to give away to make people feel good. And I always remember this. I was walking out the House floor right when COVID was starting, and I remember AOC and Maxine Waters were talking, and they said we ought to just give everybody a $10,000 check or something like that. And I thought that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then I thought, and after but 5 years later, I'm thinking if we'd have just given everybody a $10,000 check, we probably would have come out better than we did under COVID, because we ended up just shutting everything down and jerking our economy around. And I was in a meeting yesterday about education, just how much we've hurt education. And honestly, I don't know if I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but I wonder if most of that stuff was all designed by somebody. I got my suspicions, but anyway, no, I think that would be a very bad mistake. I just think it
Well,
sends the wrong message. It's free money, and nothing's free. And all they're going to do is sell some more. Yeah, and they're supposed to be for vital needs. You know what's going to happen. They're going to run down here and they're going to have widescreen TVs. If they give us $1,000, they're going to have a bunch of $950 widescreen TVs go on sale, so everybody can buy them a widescreen. It's just bogus.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's a difference between populism and conservatism. Conservatism is based on principle, sound principle. Populism is doing whatever's popular, whatever the people will cheer for. And that would be a terrible thing. I mean, if you're going to send 1,000, why not send 10? Why not send 100,000? I mean, if borrowing money, printing money, the debt, and the deficit don't matter, just make it meaningful. On another subject, I want to thank you for being a co-sponsor of Thomas Massey's bill calling for the full release of the Epstein files. Thank you for showing principle and courage in that respect. If when you get back in September, if the speaker is continuing to fight on that and how Republican leadership is fighting or resisting that, are you willing to sign a discharge petition, try to force that to the floor?
Honestly, I thought I already did. Thomas and I had talked about that. My message of that goes a lot deeper than most. I don't think the Democrats have anything on Trump on this thing. I don't know what the delay is on all of it. If they had it, they've had it for 4 years. They would have released it. I don't think that. I don't think people realize the vastness if they don't understand the vastness of this network and the satanic nature of this child molestation, just how deep it goes. Real quick, Bob, I'm sorry, but I sponsored some of the toughest laws in the country on this. I sponsored chemical castration for child molesters. I distribute. There was some horrible loopholes in laws on distribution. I made those tight so people would go do some real time if they distributed child pornography or involved in this insidious, I don't even call it an industry. I sponsored the death penalty. It was ruled unconstitutional, but now we've got a different court, same legislation. It is constitutional now in Tennessee. ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, where these people pose as children on the internet and they catch these dirtbags in our 3 grand divisions. I've done all that. I'm one of the few maybe in Congress that knowingly has held the hand of somebody who's been molested, and they carry a life sentence, and it is beyond me that anybody could slow walk any of this.
That's right.
Now, my concern is the 1,000 young ladies. I was on a TV show, maybe it was CNN, and they talked about the women, these young girls who'd had sex with these men. And I said, ma'am, let me correct you on something. Those little girls were raped. And she said, oh, yes, I stand corrected, And I think we got to remove sex was something that's pretty cool that God created between a husband and a wife. And so I think that we've just sort of calloused ourselves to this whole thing. And the largest importer of child pornography and the most offenders in the world are in the United States of America. And we better address it. One day we're going to stand before, and I said, I was on, and I thought I really got through to him, Bob. I know you're a believer, Christian like myself, but I was on one of the major networks, and in your office when the lights, if you don't move every 15 minutes, the lights go off. I don't know if they did in yours, but mine did, and it went off during the thing, and I said, and she said, somebody doesn't want you to talk, so I moved my hand like that, and the light came on. And at the end, and I told her, I said, ma'am, ultimately, I'm going to stand before my Creator. And if he says, what did you do for the least amongst us? And that was Jesus's words. I'm Tim Burchett paraphrasing. Right. And I said, well, dadgummit, I hope I did everything I could. I want to go on a clear conscience. And at the end, the lady said, clearly Tim Burchett answers to a different light. And I thought, holy cow, maybe I got through to somebody, and, But anyway, I'm sorry. You gave me a long answer, and that's where I'm at. And I just think we ought to go at it. I do worry about the innocents being exposed. The young ladies who are adults now, some of them probably have killed themselves or experienced some really terrible lives because of that. I worry about innocent people that maybe flew on a plane, not to the island, but like Trump. And Trump banned him 15 years ago. And so I just go back and forth. I can't figure out, because honestly, nobody's called me off from the White House. I haven't received that call to say back off this thing. And I've gotten the disparaging looks from from some people on the House floor and, the conversations, but nobody's called me off of the direction I've been going. So
Well, I hope that if you get that call, that you'll ignore and resist it. I think you will. Thanks for standing strong on this issue. To your point, it's about the 1,000 victims. It's about justice. It's about transparency, accountability. Republican Party has to stand for that. Nobody can defend not being in favor of full disclosure, full release, protecting the victims, as you said. But that's who it should be about. Jeffrey Epstein didn't do this all by himself, and we need to be the party of blind justice, of everyone equal under the law, even the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected. Do I think it'll be embarrassing to influential Republicans and Democrats? Probably so. But if it's criminal, it needs to be exposed, irrespective. We know it is criminal, but whomever it impacts from a criminal standpoint, let the chips fall where they may. So thanks for being courageous and principled on that. A couple other quick questions. We're on track to deport some 500,000 this year, so maybe about 2 million, the way we're tracking right now, over the 4 years of President Trump's term. If we continue at this pace, the Dems brought 15, 20 million into the country during the Biden border invasion, the Democrat border invasion. The president has called for, or at least hinted at, and his Ag Secretary Rollins has hinted at, amnesty for illegals working in the service sector, hospitality, restaurants, and hotels, or those working on farms and so forth. Do you support any kind of amnesty or what they're calling a works program? And how concerned are you about that from people like Salazar in the House?
I think the problem we got with that, Bob, is that originally the plan worked pretty good, but like all government programs that start out, USAID, any of that stuff, it just gets corrupted, and that's what's happened with it. I think we need to gut the total system. When I talk to farmers and it costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring people in to work, that's not the way the system was originally formatted. I think under Reagan we had a work program that people could come in. We knew where they were. They came in and worked, and then they left, went back home. And the problem is they just stayed and they became ingrained. And then you got the anchor babies, and then you're on 3 generations, and there's no way to pull it back. So I think amnesty is a bad idea. I think any talk of that, I think you better stop the program and recreate something without a bunch of freaking Washington bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats making decisions, because all they'll do is, oh, we got to fill out this form, that form. All it is job security. I remember when I was in the state legislature, preacher talked to me about his brother had a organization which is still in effect that takes care of kids that have been molested, and they have a home, and they bring them in, and they give them the gospel, and give them schools and love and care that they really need and deserve. And the more people that they brought in, the higher fees that they had to pay to the state. And I just said, that's ridiculous. Let's make it all one deal and do away with the rest. And they came to me and said, you can't do that. And I said, why is that? And said, it'll cost me my job. And I said, what's your job? And they said, collecting the fees. I mean, it's like cancer. It's just a growth for growth's sake. And I think you'll see that in this program of immigration if we're not careful. So again, gut it. Let's get a simple program. If there's a monitoring thing, let's make sure though first that we've got Americans that can do this job. I think we could, again, the Republicans could reach out to organized labor a little bit on this and say, what are we doing? And also automation is going to take care of a whole heck of a lot of that in the fields and things like that. We're going to see it be more profitable now with all this new technology we have.
Tim, last question before we move to touching on the Senate in Tennessee. The president suggested recently that maybe we ought to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule 3 drug instead of a Schedule 1, which would reduce the consequence or penalty from a federal law standpoint, and it would greatly embolden, empower, and help the marijuana industry to make more money. What are your thoughts on that, on reclassifying marijuana as a Class 3 drug instead of a Class 1?
It's a little more complex than I wished it was, because I'm a fan of hemp, but hemp, they said they legalized it, and the reality is the cotton people wrote the bill. You got to be fingerprinted to grow hemp, fiber industry, and it is a cousin of marijuana, but it doesn't have the THC, the ability to get you high. A matter of fact, I was going to do a documentary on me. I got a little farm, and I was going to try to grow some hemp and just show the stupid process. You just make it legal or illegal. I worry about Bob locking people up in the federal penitentiary for weed under the same classification as heroin. Again, we've got to get with the legal, the real folks on the front line and get the scientists in here. You and I have some dear friends that um, that are in Congress that have pushed for some of this stuff. Our friend Eli Crane, due to post-traumatic stress syndrome, um, I think that's what they call it. Anyway, he, not that he has it, but he's lobbied for some more experimental type drugs to be used for folks that have had some horrible trauma in their life, which these guys have, in defense of our country. So I think we need to get those people to the table and figure out what we're doing. And also, can we not make this stuff in the lab? Can we not do it in the lab and not have it grown? Because when you, I don't see how you're going to, they say, oh, legalize it and then tax it, which to me, my libertarian antennas go up. Tax it for what? Create more government? Government, I don't want to give government any more money. I want government to be broke. I want them to be not be a revenue source. I worry about the whole thing. I know people just sit around and smoke weed, and are we going to allow the testing? Is somebody, are they going to be on heavy equipment? Are they going to fly in an airplane? Are they all this stuff? There's just it's a whole thing we've got to get through before we just blanket do that. But do I think somebody ought to be doing a life sentence because they get caught with a bag of weed that's over the limit of resale? I don't think so. I don't think it's heroin. I don't think it's fentanyl. But I worry about the long-term effects. I have buddies of mine graduated from, I'm 60 now, of course, graduated with high school that were incredibly high IQ, and they still smoke weed, and they're very dull, and I think they've thrown away a good portion of their life because of that.
Well, I hope that Republicans will stand against it if it comes up, because I don't think any country or society or state or culture has been benefited by more people doing recreational, behavior altering, addictive drugs, and some will argue on the addictiveness of marijuana. And you and I both know we can apply that to alcohol too. I don't drink. I don't think you drink either. But you see the culture of dependency, homelessness goes up, addiction goes up, unemployment goes up, and so forth. In Virginia, they moved towards legalization over the last few years. They've diminished the penalties and the consequence, and you can't hardly go anywhere without smelling marijuana in Virginia now. You got the secondhand smoke, if you will, when you're in a hotel or an apartment or out on the street or even behind a car, you're breathing in. You can smell the marijuana. So I hope Republicans will stand against it. But turning to the final subject, the Senate, the U.S. Senate, you have. I don't know if announced is the right word from a formal standpoint, but you have said that you are considering, planning an R, so you can clarify that for us. If you were to move to the Senate, Tim, you would immediately become one of the top 5 or 6 senators. You wouldn't have a whole lot of competition for that. The Senate's even worse than the House, so we certainly need you. But tell us a little bit about your intent for the Senate and what a primary race looks like if you move forward with this, or if you continue to move forward with this.
Well, thank you for asking that, Bob. In Tennessee, it's a little different. Marsha Blackburn's running, just announced she's running for the governor's race. And I think she has an excellent shot. She's been conservative. We were in the state legislature together. State Senate sat right beside her on the Senate floor. She fought the income tax. She's the one that got it out on the, right after Al Gore had invented the internet. She got it out on the internet that they're getting ready. The big boys are trying to pass an income tax, and she literally stopped it with that, because nobody understood the internet like Marcia did, and she got it to talk radio, and it was magnificent. So if she wins the primary, she will be the governor of the state of Tennessee. And if so, the governor makes the appointment because she's got 2 more years after the election to stay in the Senate. So she's in a really enviable position. If she loses, I don't think she will. But if she does lose, then she goes back to the Senate.
Right.
But if she's elected, she could literally resign from the Senate right before she walks across the stage to get sworn in, gets sworn in, walks off the stage, and appoints her successor. So, or she could win the primary, resign, and our current governor would appoint her successor. So I don't know where that's going to lie. Our current governor just came out and said that he's not going to endorse, and I'm not sure what that's all about. But that's his decision. So it's
Congressman, if so, whomever, whether it's Blackburn, the current governor, whoever appoints the successor, they serve out their full remaining 2 years. There would not be a special election until 2 years from now, until after her
Well,
term.
that remains unclear. If Marshall wins, she would appoint her successor, and I believe that it would, since it falls within in a certain time period, that you would ride that out for 2 more years and then run for U.S. Senate again if you chose to do it. And so there's talk: are they going to put a placekeeper in? And you know how placekeepers work. They get one of their buddies in there, and then they travel around the state and the country, and they go on a few codels, and they start believing their press releases, and then the big boys, they get what they want out of them, and they jack them up with enough money, and then you run as a re-elect. So it's hard to beat an incumbent. You know that. I've beat an incumbent. You beat an incumbent. But the odds are against us on that. So, but as this thing behind you shows, I have been the orange are the states or counties I've been in, and we weren't running for the Senate when we started this little venture. I was just being asked. I was just being asked by these Lincoln Day. I love going and speaking to good old boys and girls in the inner city and labor. I'll go to anywhere. And the crowds are getting bigger and bigger, and the momentum's getting bigger and bigger. And I don't want to be one of those guys who says, "Oh, we're going to form an exploratory committee," or "Oh, I'm being drafted," that kind of stuff. No, if I'm given the opportunity, dadgummit, I would love to be in the United States Senate. I would work my tail off.
How can folks help you, support you, follow you in this effort?
Yeah. Well, I'm on Twitter at Tim Burchett. You can go on Burchett for Congress if you'll make a contribution. What you can do though is donate to my congressional campaign, and I can, if we were to run for the U.S. Senate, I could convert that over to my Senate campaign. And and one of the weaknesses that I have, Bob, is that the big boys, they don't always support me on the first go round.
They don't like
always
people like you.
Yeah, they call me the day after the election and say, "Hey, come by and get a check." And they always say, "We were with you all along." And I say, "Oh yeah, I really felt y'all right there towards the end." And so I get that, but the momentum we're building momentum, and it is very encouraging. My campaign guy put a thing on Twitter the other day where I was and I talked to Matt Gaetz about this even. He put something out that, if you get a call from me today, be forewarned, I'm probably going to ask you for a contribution, and it's just like, it was a great picture though he took. I was surprised at how good it looked because I was in it. And we received that weekend, it wasn't a whole lot of money, but we received, it was, I think, 60 or 70 different people get given money, and only 2, I think, were within my district. And they had sent, and they were small contributions. But Bob, when somebody sends you $10 check wrapped in a Bible verse, that's our people. I used to say back when I was in the state legislature, when this was a substantial amount of money in this game, somebody would send you $1,000 check. They were probably giving your opposition $1,000 in cash. So, but when the good old boys and girls send you a little small contribution, that actually means more to me, because that's some little lady or somebody on a fixed income or some working guy and gal who want to be supportive and want to be a part of it. So we're building some great momentum. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'll stay in the house and just keep slugging it out. But if I'm given that opportunity, I would love that opportunity.
Well, Tim, thanks for fighting the good fight. We need more courageous conservative warriors like you in DC, in Congress, whether on the House side or the Senate side. So we'll be following and watching you closely. Thanks for joining the Good for America podcast. Appreciate you being with us, Congressman Burchett from Tennessee too. Just remind all of our listeners and all of our viewers to subscribe to the Good for America podcast, rate the show, share it with your friends, follow me on social media at Rep Bob Good. Let's keep the republic.